How is the NFL so good at creating absolute cinema with every single one of these games? And I mean, this stretches before the playoffs. I mean, we saw the 49ers and the Bears. Now we see the Bears with 25 points in the fourth quarter to beat the Green Bay Packers, a meltdown of epic proportions for Green Bay, to the point where I think that the Green Bay Packers might move on from their coach, Matt LaFleur. Ed Policy, who's the son of Carmen Policy, the former 49ers executive back in those dynastic years, he's going to have a decision to make, but things did not trend in the right direction for Green Bay this year. I know that they lost Micah Parsons, but that was still just a failed defensive performance down the stretch. They got worse defensively over last year's performance. And that was without Micah Parsons last year. They could not stop a nosebleed down the stretch of this game against the Bears. You have to give Caleb Williams credit. I will give him credit. I will give Chicago credit for continuing to fight in this game. That's been the MO for the Bears all season. Did they get lucky again? I mean, you could argue that. Brandon McManus missed a couple field goals and he missed an extra point for Green Bay. And that meant that the door was open for Chicago. And then it was essentially closed for Green Bay without those timeouts and with that drop, because had McManus made the extra point that he missed, they'd only be playing to try to tie the game. They'd only need 3 instead of the touchdown at the very end. And then Jordan Love, who played a generally good game, but he got cold in the second half when it mattered. And then when it absolutely mattered, there's these brain farts that you're getting used to seeing from Jordan Love in these huge moments. I know that 49ers fans will always remember Jordan Love just throwing across his body to Dre Greenlaw in that NFC divisional round playoff game in 2023. And it was like, what the hell are you doing? You've got timeouts and you got plenty of time on the clock. All you need is a field goal. It was like his head wasn't in the game on the final snap today, and he dropped the snap. And, you know, what was crazy about that is that Chicago was playing far off. There were 7 seconds left. I thought that Green Bay could have easily run a quick screen to the wide receiver on the near side, and he could have picked up 5-6 yards at least and stepped out of bounds and then reset everything for an easier shot at the end zone. And a more aware quarterback in that situation would have absolutely capitalized on that. While Jordan Love should have just pointed at his wide receiver, the Bears with Dennis Allen's defense were 15 yards off the ball. He should have pointed at his wide receiver, said, hey, I'm going to throw you a quick screen. You can pick up 5 yards. You can step out of bounds. There were 7 seconds left on the clock, and we're going to have a shot from maybe the 25, maybe even the 23, 22-yard line instead of the 30-plus or wherever it was. But Jordan Love didn't have the presence of mind to do that. He wasn't even involved enough in the game to cleanly field the snap. It didn't look like a bad snap out of the shotgun. He fumbled it, and then instead of just throwing the ball out of bounds or whatever, he panicked. There were 7 seconds left. He didn't want the time to expire, so he just kind of haphazardly threw it toward the end zone, and it was intercepted to end the game. Wow. For the 49ers, this means that they will be heading to Seattle if they can beat the Philadelphia Eagles tomorrow. So if the Packers had won, then the 49ers would be in position to go to LA with a win over the Eagles. Now the Eagles and the 49ers are playing a game that if San Francisco wins it, would send the 49ers to face the Seattle Seahawks. I do not think that this is the preferred path for the 49ers. I think that this is as hard as it possibly could have been. Obviously, when they lost to Seattle, they lost control of that number 1 seed. When they lost control of the number 1 seed, they had to go through the wild card round. Based on all the events of Week 18, the 49ers were doomed to have to go through Philadelphia. I believe that the trip through Philadelphia is the toughest possible pathway for San Francisco. If they win against the Eagles now, they'll have to go play a rested Seattle team next week. I'm guessing that game might be, well, we'll see what they do if it is the 49ers and the Seahawks. The NFL typically likes to give the 1 seed the Saturday game because that allows the 1 seed to have an extra day of rest if they do win the divisional round for the NFC Championship. But the 49ers would have to travel cross-country and be on a short week if it was the Saturday game next week. Either way, I think that it's more important that the 49ers focus on beating the Philadelphia Eagles, because the point is that everything about this has been made as difficult as possible for the 49ers based on the results that we've seen. I mean, a little bit earlier today, this was the text title for the Rams. The Rams barely avoided an epic choke job. It wasn't just the 49ers who wanted the Carolina Panthers to win that game. I think that everybody in the NFL that is contending for a Super Bowl this year would have rather seen the worst team, the 8-9 team, pull the upset over the Rams. But the Rams were able to skate free in Carolina. And then today, the Green Bay Packers up in this game, they're up 21-3, lose this one 31-27. We can take a look at the epic final totals of this game as soon as I get them up here on the screen. There's the city of Philadelphia. We could play that here. City Hall, look at that. Green, not for the Packers, but for the Eagles. It was raining a little bit tonight. I think it's dried up a bit. Should actually be dry conditions tomorrow here in Philly for the 49ers and the Eagles. Here you go. Final totals, and I want to go to the scoring in this game. It's all Bears in that second half, minus the golden touchdown in the fourth quarter. But it was 21-3, and the Bears had an 8% chance to win this game, according to the prediction markets. And then it wasn't like this instantaneous rampage from the Bears. It was a lot like how they came back against Green Bay in that regular season game at Soldier Field. They got a massive, massive break at the very end when McManus missed the extra point. And that ended up being something that didn't open the door like the onside kick, but it definitely helped close the door when the Bears were playing defense. And this was a game of two poor defenses. The Chicago Bears, the number 22 defense in the league, the Green Bay Packers, the number 21 defense in the league. And those two defenses both were playing hot potato with who was going to blow this football game. And it ended up being the Green Bay Packers defense that was a little bit worse. And it ended up being the Chicago Bears defense that had the benefit of time on its side. Mike has a great little graphic here that I could put up on the screen that I think is going to be a very good illustration of how Chicago progressively came back in this football game. Here we go. So for the Bears, it was 21-3 with 10-11 to go in the third quarter. Then they scored a touchdown to make it 21-9. They didn't get the 2-point conversion, so it was still a 12-point game with 10:08 to go in the third quarter. A few minutes later, or actually, now we're in the fourth quarter. Sorry, I'm looking 21-3 at the start of the third quarter. Then they made it 21-9 in the fourth quarter because those 25 points all came in the fourth quarter. That's right. So 21-9 early in the fourth, 10:08. 21-16 after another touchdown about 3.5 minutes later. Then Green Bay came back and scored, but they only put up 6 because McManus missed the extra point. Special teams played a major, major role in both games today. Then the Bears scored a touchdown plus the 2-point conversion to pull within 3. And then McManus missed the field goal with just a couple minutes left. And it allowed Chicago to drive down the field, score the winning touchdown. And for the Green Bay Packers going the other way, they ran out of time. I thought the injury and the 10-second runoff was absolutely brutal for Green Bay. So the Bears trailed this game in the final 2 minutes. It becomes their 7th win of the season when trailing in the last 2 minutes. They've had an absurd year with good bounces and clutch play at the end of games. You do have to give Caleb Williams credit for playing a lot better at the end of this game than he did at the beginning of it. I mean, some of those incompletions and interceptions really just made you scratch your head. I think that he's the type of quarterback that because he does run around a lot, because the Bears have a lot of good weapons downfield, they have a good offensive line, defenses tire out, especially the defenses that aren't that good tire out, and he has the arm and he has the improvisational ability to make defenses who are giving up more space, which naturally happens toward the end of the games. He has the ability to make those defenses pay. We saw that happen down the stretch against the 49ers, but the 49ers were able to muscle up in the red zone And the Packers, quite frankly, today were not. And these are all defenses ranked in the 20s when you're talking about the Packers or the 49ers. So these are all defenses not quite built to stymie an offense toward the end of the game when they are fatigued. Carolina is another good example. The Carolina Panthers defense also ranked down in the 20s, and they were unable to hold the Rams, especially without J.C. Horn, their star cornerback today. All right, we can take a look at the team tier chart if you want to understand how this really plays out in the NFL. The Packers and the Bears, the Packers were 1-point favorites, so it's not shocking that the Bears won this game if you just consider what we thought entering it. It is shocking that the Bears were able to come from down 21-3 and score 25 points in the fourth quarter. Again, is this it for Matt LaFleur in Green Bay? Because that was an epic choke for the Chicago Bears, or for the Green Bay Packers against the Bears. That was something that I think Ed Policy is going to have to take a long, hard look in the mirror, and he's going to have to ask himself, yeah, Matt LaFleur has coached successful football in Green Bay, but have the Packers hit their ceiling? This is the third year of Jordan Love starting at that quarterback position for Green Bay. And it's the third year where, I don't think that we've necessarily seen the clutch time growth that you need to see from somebody like Jordan Love. I mean, today, Caleb Williams was more clutch than Jordan Love. Early in the game, I said, well, Green Bay obviously has the better quarterback here. Jordan Love was using both sides of the field. He was stretching the field really nicely. They've got fast receivers in Green Bay. They have talent at that position, and he was taking advantage of the fact that the Bears aren't a great defense. He was showing off that arm talent. He looked composed. But when push came to shove in this game, although they moved the ball downfield and there was that costly drop, it is always at those highest leverage moments where you have to judge these players, because that's what makes or breaks success in the NFL. And Jordan Love just looked completely out of sorts at the very highest leverage moment at the end of the game. He didn't identify that he had a quick dump off that he could have made with 7 seconds left to make it easier. And instead he was too worried about taking the shotgun snap. I guess he wasn't worried enough. He dropped the snap. He picked it up. He was totally lost out there. And, that's something that you'd expect in year one from the quarterback. It can't happen now in year three. It just can't. And it's a reflection not only of Jordan Love, it's a reflection of Matt LaFleur. There does seem to be a ceiling that Green Bay has hit with this particular group of talent, and things aren't going to get any better than they were set up earlier this year when they traded for Micah Parsons. And now Parsons got hurt fairly late into the year. I don't know when he's going to be back in 2026. Love did take a step forward statistically over the course of the regular season this year. But again, these guys are going to be judged by the postseason. That's how the NFL works, especially for a proud franchise like the Green Bay Packers. They head home. The 49ers now do not have a chance to host an NFC postseason game at Levi's Stadium. The only chance that they had for that was if the Green Bay Packers had won, because the number 7 seed belonged to Green Bay and the 49ers are number 6. The 49ers are now the lowest surviving seed in the NFC. We can illustrate the bracket for you right here. So down here, Green Bay does not advance. 7 is eliminated. The 6 49ers are still alive. The 5 Rams are still alive. 4 Carolina and 7 Green Bay eliminated. 3 and 6 play tomorrow. So if the 49ers win, if they notch this upset against the Philadelphia Eagles, they will head as the lowest surviving seed to Seattle, and the Rams will head on the road to face the Chicago Bears for what would be a really, really interesting game, given the fact that the Rams, that defense is bleeding yardage right now for the Rams. They gave up 31 points today to the Carolina Panthers, and the Rams special teams isn't good either. The Bears have been getting a lot of greasy wins, evidenced by the fact they've come from behind to win 7 times in the final 2 minutes of games. It's going to be dangerous for the Rams, who historically have not been good in cold weather. But first, we're going to be paying attention to the AFC games tomorrow and, of course, to the 49ers and the Eagles as San Francisco tries to get a rematch with the Seattle Seahawks. That would mean 2 straight games against the 49ers for the Seahawks, by the way. Week 18, they win at Levi's Stadium to earn the 1 seed. And the reason that the 49ers probably would have preferred the Packers to win this game, the main one, I think, is that you play a team that is coming off of a cross-country flight and not a team coming off of a bye week. The Rams having to fly back across country, Carolina to LA. Now they're going to have to take off and go to Chicago, but we're not sure yet. Obviously, it's going to depend on the 49ers-Eagles game tomorrow. But the 49ers and their potential divisional round opponent, I think the tiebreaker there is the rest. I think that you don't want to play a fresh team, especially one that just dominated you at both lines of scrimmage in Week 18. But that's the path that the 49ers would have to take. Now, that being said, there are several things that the 49ers wish they could have done differently against Seattle, and maybe they can earn that chance when they win against Philadelphia tomorrow. It's crazy to me that if the 49ers do win tomorrow, then the path for them has turned into Seattle, which is defensive slog type of game, Philadelphia, which obviously lines up to be defensive slog type of game, at least for the 49ers offense, playing a really good defense. And then the path would naturally turn back to Seattle, defensive slog type of battle for Brock Purdy and the offense. The 49ers won a defensive slog type of game in Seattle in Week 1. It's obviously tough to win that type of game when you're not at full strength offensively. They did it in Week 1 without George Kittle, and Trent Williams was banged up in Week 1 as well. This week, they're going to have Trent Williams back. We know that. We don't know about Ricky Pearsall for San Francisco. Kittle should be healthier than last week, and the Eagles, I don't think they're quite as good defensively as the Seattle Seahawks. But if the 49ers win this one, they're going to have to go back and face a team that is superb defensively. I think the best defense in the league. I think Seattle really established that with their play over the regular season. I mean, take a look at this. Let's go to the offense defense chart. We could take a look at some of the box scores later, but the one thing that always astounds me about Seattle's defense is how damn good they've been against the run this year. And I think that this really illustrates what the 49ers dealt with last week, what they're set to deal with against the Philadelphia Eagles tomorrow, and what they will have to face next week if they do win this game against Philadelphia. So X-axis is pass defense. You want to be further to the right on the X. Y-axis is run defense. You want to be further up for a run defense. Look at Seattle. They are outliers of outliers in terms of run defense. So if you're wondering, how did the 49ers get so snuffed out offensively even after they were scoring 35 a game for a month plus prior to that game against the Seattle Seahawks? Well, there's your answer. Seattle just stonewalls the run. I think that Philadelphia is a good defense. They're also in the upper right. You could see the Eagles logo there. But they're clustered in there with a lot of other good defenses. No disrespect to the defending world champions. Seattle's a historically good defense. It's on like the top 15 DVOA list as far as defenses go. So, I mean, you look at the difference here, and it's like, whoa. 49ers played just a juggernaut defensively last week. They lost. They only managed 3 points for all the reasons that we talked about. This week, they play a very good defense, and things should ease up a little bit. They should also be a little bit healthier with Trent Williams scheduled to come back. We'll see on Ricky Pearsall, and obviously George Kittle is a week further removed from the low ankle sprain. But what happened today with the Rams winning and then with the Chicago Bears winning means that the 49ers would have to go right back up and face the Seattle Seahawks if they win. So, I mean, the 49ers were talking about it in the locker room after the game against Seattle. They said, you know, everything this year has come hard. Bring it on. Make this as hard as possible. So they didn't get the 1 seed, so the very easy path off the table for the 49ers. But now, even without the 1 seed, this is as hard as it possibly can get. If the 49ers can overcome the path in front of them now, it just became even more daunting today. In an ideal world, they would have seen Carolina upset the Rams, to knock out the Rams, and they would have seen the Packers beat the Bears. That would have allowed the 49ers to play the Panthers, who are obviously the worst team in the NFC playoffs, next week had they beaten the Philadelphia Eagles. That's coming up tomorrow. And it also would have kept the possibility of an NFC title game at Levi's Stadium alive. Neither of those two things are possible now. Now it's you've got to beat Philadelphia, the defending world champions. Then you've got to head back to Seattle 4+ months after you won there in week 1 and play the team that just snuffed you out 13-3. And then I guess if the 49ers are lucky, even if they manage to win both of these two games, if they're lucky, then they head to Chicago in the January cold. They could make a reenactment of the 1988 season game where they came in and won 28-3. But if you're lucky, you'd rather face, I think, Chicago over the Rams, although some people would argue maybe you'd rather have the Rams since LA is not playing that great of football right now. They almost got beat by the Carolina Panthers today. You know, in a way, it's now set up a little bit like 2021, where the 49ers were the 7th seed in 2021, and it was the absolute hardest path that the 49ers had to take in 2021 in front of them. They had to go play the number 2 seed Dallas Cowboys as the 7 in the wild card round. And the Cowboys were the number 1 ranked offense in all football that year. And the 49ers found a way to win in Dallas, thanks in large part to Deebo Samuel and his heroics. Then they had to go in the snow, in the ice, freezing weathers up to Green Bay against the first seeded, the Packers, coming off a bye. Similar situation as what would happen if the 49ers beat the Eagles, and they had to go into Green Bay and beat a team coming off that bye, and they got it done. They got it done in overtime. They needed a greasy win. They got it thanks to Jordan Willis and the block punt. And finally, the 49ers ran out of gas in the NFC Championship game, coming back down the SoFi where they had a crowd advantage, but the Rams just had more in the tank, and the Rams were able to come from behind 10 to win at the end. Similar setup can happen this year if the Rams end up playing the Bears and beating the Bears. And the 49ers would obviously have to win 2 playoff games, which seems like a little bit of a long shot. But I think if anything, based on what we've seen today, it is all on the table. If the Panthers were almost able to beat the Rams, and then if the Bears were able to score 25 points in the fourth quarter against the Green Bay Packers, the NFL knows how to put on an extremely captivating product. And I think anything and everything is on the table moving forward. This is going to be so fun. The first 2 games are in the books, and it's already been absolutely sensational. It almost seems scripted at this point. The NFL is so good at this, and they're so good at fostering some of the backstories, like Ben Johnson, the great Chicago Bears head coach. When he was hired on playing the Packers, Ben Johnson really, I think, added some fuel to this rivalry. Well, now that he's beaten the Packers in 2 of 3 tries, I think it's not a bad time to revisit that initial Ben Johnson press conference.
I know this is the toughest division of football right now. There's 3 teams that made the playoffs this year. I've got tremendous amount of respect for the coaches and the players in this league, having competed against them for the last 6 years. Dan Campbell, Kevin O'Connell, you're talking about 2 guys that are up for Coach of the Year awards as the season ends here. And to be quite frank with you, I kind of enjoyed beating Matt LaFleur twice a year.
Some nervous laughter in that room after he said that. Well, guess what? Ben Johnson has now beaten Matt LaFleur twice this season. Lost to him the first round, got him the second time, thanks to an onside kick. I mean, the Bears got lucky in that regular season game, but sometimes it's better to be lucky than good. And today they were both lucky and good. Today it was a full-scale meltdown from the Green Bay Packers that may cost Matt LaFleur his job. I think John Harbaugh might want that Packers job. If he likes Jordan Love, if he thinks that he can take him to the next level, if they think they could break through that ceiling with John Harbaugh as the coach, if Ed Policy believes that in Green Bay, he's the CEO of the Packers. If he thinks that this LaFleur thing has run its course, you know, there are some losses that are so bad that you really, really don't come back from them in the NFL. And, for George Seifert, for example, with the 49ers in 96, they lost to the Green Bay Packers for the second straight year in the postseason. I think the third straight time altogether, including the regular season, because they also lost at Lambeau Field in the overtime. For George Seifert, that was it. That was back in the Carmen Policy days of the 49ers with Eddie DeBartolo Jr. They ended up moving on to Steve Mariucci because they felt that they had hit a ceiling with Seifert. They weren't going to get any higher. That the highest they obviously got was that Super Bowl in the 94 season. But then the Packers started beating San Francisco, and that was it. The 49ers moved to Steve Mariucci, and they finally got over the Green Bay hump, but obviously they couldn't get to a Super Bowl anymore. I wonder if the Packers have hit that point with Matt LaFleur. He has been there for a while. I still remember the 2019 season NFC Championship game, back when Aaron Rodgers was the Green Bay Packers quarterback, and the 49ers just completely boat raced the Packers out of Levi's Stadium. In 2020, the Packers had an MVP season from Aaron Rodgers, but it was Tom Brady and the Bucs who went into Lambeau Field in front of an empty stadium, mostly empty stadium, and were able to win in the clutch. 2021, the Packers had the 1 seed and the 49ers beat them. And then, Green Bay hadn't been as good since, right? 2022, they didn't make the playoffs in the final year of Aaron Rodgers. 2023, they moved to Jordan Love. They lose to the 49ers in the divisional round. 2024, they lost to the Eagles last year, right? Yeah, I think they ran into that buzzsaw that was Philadelphia in the 2024 season. And now, this loss probably worse than all of them, to be honest. 2021 losing at home in the divisional round off of a bye week against the 49ers was pretty damn bad. But this was to your hated rivals, to the Bears. This was to Caleb Williams and a team that was looking inept for over half the game offensively. This was when the Chicago Bears were not playing good defense, but you just ran out of time on your own. I know that injury and the 10-second runoff had a lot to do with it, but Jordan Love, when it mattered most, just completely froze. Deer in the headlights kind of situation for him. It's not a good reflection of where Green Bay is from a leadership position. So I'm really, really intrigued to see what they do next. I'm sure the Bears are back to their cheese grating ways. I thought that they might be regretting the cheese grater stuff. For a long time in this game, I'm like, oh boy. They were down to like a 7 or 8% probability to win. And then the Chicago Bears were able to get it done. Matt LaFleur on if he expects to return to Green Bay for the 2026 season. He answers, with all due respect to your question, now's not the time for that. I'm hurting for these guys. I can only think about what just happened, and there will be time for that. Wow, that sounds like a guy that might be prepping to be fired. He just totally deflected the question. If you expect to come back for 2026, you can just say yes. I don't want to talk about it any further, but he completely punted on the question. And it's really unfortunate for Green Bay and for Matt LaFleur because, we can talk all we want about the choke job at the very end from the offense. We could talk about the defense bleeding all that yardage to the Bears, but special teams, it's crazy. This has been a unifying force between a lot of these upset losses. Green Bay in 2021 against the 49ers at Lambeau was special teams. It was the blocked field goal from Jordan Willis and the blocked punt by Jordan Willis and Talanoa Hufanga scooping it up and taking it into the end zone. Well, Brandon McManus missing 2 field goals, missing an extra point today. Massive, massive part of that Chicago Bears win. And the Bears have been getting those kind of greasy breaks this year. I think that they're feeling like a team of destiny. Again, I'm not convinced that Chicago is strong enough team-wide to do this against some of the better teams, but they did get that number 2 seed by virtue of winning the division. The Rams are down at number 5. So if it is the Rams for the Chicago Bears, then you've got a truly, truly highly rated defense coming in. Now, I know the Rams have had their trouble, and they had the trouble against Carolina today. They're not on the level of Seattle. Seattle's up here. So, maybe the Bears are able to still make some hay offensively. Maybe they're able to take advantage of the fact that they're going to have the Rams in cold weather. I think the bottom line is that this is just wide open. And I think that anytime that we assume that we know something about the NFL playoffs, we should probably punt that thought. Like, we assume that the Packers are going to win this game because they're up 21-3. Nah, they're not going to win this game. We assume that the Rams are safe against the Carolina Panthers when they go up 2 scores early on. Nope, not the case. The Rams really had to sweat it out. I think without the J.C. Horn injury, I think that was concussion protocol at the end. I think without the J.C. Horn injury, the Rams don't win that game. They lucked out that Carolina's best defensive back had to exit the game at the very most important time. So the margins of these games are just so paper thin. It is absolutely wild. Mike saying that the Packers wasting a timeout killed them. Yep, they wasted it early in that drive. Obviously, the delay of game pushed them back 5 yards. The injury and not having a timeout cost the 10-second runoff. Just poor clock management. So, and I think that can really lends itself into my original point when I said that Jordan Love just, great numbers throughout the course of the regular season, right? He was number 2 in the quarterback composite grade behind only Brock Purdy. But when push comes to shove, we have seen it multiple times now. Love is not quite ready for the prime time. And I'm talking about the playoffs. I'm talking about a defense that isn't all too great in the Chicago Bears. You have to manage that clock. It's not just about the last snap that he dropped. It's about, okay, how do you position yourself on the field? When do you call the timeout? How about the play, the last play, what it should have been? How about going for the little dump off to set yourself up for an easier shot at the end zone at the end? Jordan Love is not doing a lot of the small things right at the very biggest moments of these playoff games. And I covered his first one, or at least the first loss against the 49ers back in that 2023 season when he threw across his body like Brett Favre against the New Orleans Saints. And I said, that's tough to just teach out of a guy. Some guys just freeze up and make brain fart decisions at the quarterback position in the biggest moments. And sometimes, most of the time, that just is who they are. And, at least Jordan Love, this version of him working with Matt LaFleur does seem to have those restrictions. I am going to answer some questions. It's probably crazy in that chat section. Why don't we look at the composite quarterback rankings that I was talking about? Purdy at the very top, so we're going to get to see him against the really good Philadelphia defense tomorrow. I'm really excited for that. We're going to see if Lane Johnson plays in this game. We know that Trent Williams is playing. Ricky Pearsall, much more of a TBD than Trent Williams for the 49ers. I would say probably not, but who knows? 49ers making that a game-time decision. Lane Johnson with the Liz Frank situation. Apparently there was some pain and some swelling, so that's going to be pushed up all the way to game time. The Eagles have underperformed offensively this year. There's a lot of feeling here in Philadelphia that they need Lane back. And that's going to be the piece that gets this offense rolling, especially against the bad defense like the 49ers. But they may not have him back, and they probably won't have him back at 100%, even if he is on the field. So what then? I think, again, this comes back to how can the 49ers hog the ball offensively? Can they have their way to at least a certain degree with this Philadelphia defense to control game flow, even if their own defense is going to struggle? They weren't able to do that against the Seahawks minus Trent Williams and minus Ricky Pearsall. We'll see if they're able to do that here against the Philadelphia Eagles. We've got a really, really good cheese grater photo. So those Chicago Bears fans watching, I'm going to show it to you in a second. Here, by the way, the quarterback rankings. I was talking about Jordan Love being number 2 on that list. He did a lot of good things this year, but he did not deliver when it mattered most against the Chicago Bears. And this is going to have massive, massive ripple effects on Green Bay's franchise throughout the course of this offseason. That is a bad, bad loss. Caleb Williams was all the way down to number 19. He's just a confounding quarterback. A very high bad throw percentage, 22.8%, the very bottom of the league. The accuracy not good for Caleb Williams. You could see a lot of red here. But if the Bears drag you into deep water, Caleb Williams becomes a whole lot better because of his unconventional style of play. All of a sudden, the accuracy goes up because guys are more open toward the end of games. I think that Ben Johnson's a genius, so I think he's able to take some of the still shots and some of the tape that the Bears get in real time over the course of these games, and he's able to create holes and exploit defenses later on. And He looks at the diagrams on the tablet with Caleb Williams, and he's like, this is where we're going to attack. And if you have to improvise a little bit in order for this hole to open up, well, there's a better chance it's going to open up in the fourth quarter when the defense is gassed than into the first quarter. And I think that, the 49ers, when they played the Bears, they got 2 quick stops against Chicago. And then they essentially only got 2 more the rest of the game. They got 1 before halftime and 1 at the very end, the dramatic one. They just got carved by Caleb Williams and Ben Johnson for the rest of the game. And I think a lot of that was that defense got tired. They were shorthanded to begin with. They obviously aren't great this year to begin with. And then they were just sitting ducks. And I thought that a very similar thing happened to the Packers defense that is ranked number 22 in the NFL. Those guys today just were not able to keep up with the Bears down the stretch of this game, even though they snuffed them out early. I mean, there were the fourth down stops they had early. They had Caleb Williams backpedaling and throwing stupid passes early. And then you almost have to blame, this is why these teams who have defenses who are ranked in the 20s, so that's the Bears, that's the Packers, that's the 49ers, that's the Panthers. The problem with the Panthers is the offense is also ranked in the 20s. But these teams with poorly rated defenses, you've got to have the offense be the locomotive that pulls the train for the majority of the game. The offense can't just go into hibernation for an entire quarter. In the Packers' case, nearly an entire half. I would say like 90% of the second half, the Green Bay Packers offense just hibernated. It just wasn't there. And it left the door open for the Bears to do what we talk about them doing. So I look at this Jordan Love ranking right here with a lot of skepticism because he did it in the regular season, but he was unable to do it in the postseason. Something that Purdy has already established, right, in the positive. He's performed in the postseason for the 49ers. The 49ers have actually not lost an NFC playoff game that Brock Purdy has finished with an intact elbow. 2022 postseason, they beat Seattle. They beat the Dallas Cowboys. They obviously lost to Philly, but Purdy tore up his UCL here in Philadelphia. 2023 postseason, they beat the Packers and they beat the Lions, and they didn't lose to a team in the postseason until it was the AFC's Kansas City Chiefs in the Super Bowl. And that was in overtime, and Purdy exited that game 3 times in the fourth quarter and overtime with a lead. So Brock Purdy has ported the number 1 quarterback play into the postseason already twice before. He's a proven commodity at the very highest level when it matters most. Jordan Love isn't. Tomorrow, the book on Drake May is going to open, the postseason book. Matthew Stafford, proven postseason commodity. I think that we know exactly who he is. I think that you guys know my thoughts on Matthew Stafford. I think he's a good quarterback, but I think that he's been very overrated by social media and the media in general. I think that he'll give you an interception, at least an interception a game, but you just got to catch it. Today, he gave the Panthers at least 2. They didn't catch the second one, and that ended up being the difference in the game. But Matthew Stafford made too many poor throws today to be expected to beat a good team with that type of performance. I do not think the Rams are peaking, and I've got data to back this up. As you can see here, Stafford's got a terrible bad throw rate, 17.6%. It's the red cell here. That ranks number 32 in the league. Those bad throws are going to come from Matthew Stafford at a higher frequency than any other top 10 quarterback. It really is wild. The only other top 10 quarterback who throws as many inaccurate bad throws as Matthew Stafford on a rate basis is C.J. Stroud, who we're also going to see this weekend playing the Pittsburgh Steelers. The Bears had a couple injuries today. We saw T.J. Edwards carted off the field, their linebacker early. He's the one that caught that pick 6 at the start of the 49ers-Bears game. Starting offensive tackle Ozzie Trapillo suffered a patellar injury and is out for the rest of the season. So the Bears are going to be very, very shorthanded in their next game. They will have the home field advantage. They will have some of this magic on their side, but it's really, really hard to see that continuing indefinitely. I know they ran out of some of that magic, it seemed, against the 49ers at Levi's Stadium, but this time they do have the home field advantage, and we'll see where they play. It's definitely not going to be the 49ers, though, next week, because if San Francisco wins, they are headed to Seattle. Anyway, it's fascinating to me because Caleb Williams is authoring this fascinating story. He's got a great play caller in Ben Johnson. He's got a lot of good weapons. and he's getting better and better, but he still remains such a volatile asset at the quarterback position. It is boom or bust. But when the boom comes, and it did today against the Green Bay Packers, those Bears are fun to watch. It's been a magical ride for them, and I can't wait to watch them play next week in the divisional round. In the meantime, I can't wait to see the 49ers play the Eagles tomorrow. I think that the Philadelphia defense can be attacked. I really do. Speaking of the Bears had nearly 300 rushing yards against the Philadelphia defense. I think that outside zone, the Eagles have given up about 5 yards a carry, is there for the taking. I think Sebastian Valdez, the Hulk, he played Jalen Carter for the scout team for the 49ers this week. Jalen Carter is really aggressive up front. I think Kyle Shanahan, he uses opponents' emotions against them. So if he sees that Jalen Carter fires a little too aggressively at the line of scrimmage, I think that the 49ers can turn that into some real chunk runs tomorrow. I think that the Eagles have a bear of a front. Those guys are monstrous, but they're young. The Seattle Seahawks, meanwhile, that is a bear of a front, and those guys, DeMarcus Lawrence, Leonard Williams, those guys have been around for a long time. They don't fall for a lot of the stuff that I think the Eagles might fall for tomorrow. The Eagles fell for it against Ben Johnson, who schemed up a really, really productive rushing attack against them. And I think that Kyle Shanahan might have some of that in his bag tomorrow, because it should be easier for the 49ers to run some of that stuff and create some of those openings. It should be easier than it was against Seattle. Again, here are the Seahawks defensively. Here are the Eagles defensively. The 49ers' prize, if they're able to win this game, will be to face this again. So they have made this as hard as they possibly can, but they have to take this 1 week at a time. They have to just tunnel vision on the Philadelphia Eagles, figure out a way to run at Jalen Carter, figure out a way to keep Jordan Davis on the field for a longer portion of time. Jordan Davis is a tall defensive tackle who he'll start playing with very high pad level if the 49ers can string together some drives and have him start sucking some wind. So you've got to be better on third down than you were against the Seahawks. They were 2 of 9 against Seattle. But the 49ers have been the best third down team in all football this year. They've converted 49.8% of their third downs. So if you move the chains, a tall defensive tackle like Jordan Davis could get tired. It's happened before. It happened when the Bears came into Philly and won on Black Friday. I think you can attack the edges with some depth in this game. The Eagles are a lot better than they were the last time the 49ers were here in Philly defensively. They've added Zach Bond at linebacker. They've added Nakobe Dean at linebacker. They've drafted a couple really good corners in Quinyon Mitchell and in Cooper DeJean. Those are their top 2 picks in the draft in 2024. Helped them win the Super Bowl last year. I mean, they are so much better on the back 10. They obviously have Vic Fangio now, who's one of the best defensive coordinators in the game. But they still like to come after you from the edges, and they like to rush hard. Jalix Hunt used to be a safety, and he's an edge rusher now. So he's a lighter player. You run at those edges, and you take advantage of that over-aggressiveness. You can make hay just like the Chicago Bears did if you're the San Francisco 49ers in this game. But it has to be a very, very deft game plan from Kyle Shanahan, and the 49ers are going to have to execute their asses off in this game for that to work. And then it's going to come down to Brock Purdy binding it together with how he throws on those third downs. And it's going to come down to protection too for the 49ers. Good thing for them is that Trent Williams is back, but then you wonder how close to 100% is he going to be. You're going to have to work against the Jalen Phillips, the trade acquisition for the Philadelphia Eagles, came over from Miami. You know, Jalen Phillips, he's the one who essentially broke Jimmy Garoppolo's foot that led to Brock Purdy's first action against the Miami Dolphins back in week 13 of that 2022 season. Jalen Phillips was on Miami then. He's a draft pick out of UCLA for the Dolphins. 49ers are driving down the field. Garoppolo had just hit Christian McCaffrey on a big pass, and then it was third down, and Jalen Phillips sacked Jimmy Garoppolo, broke his foot. That led to Brock Purdy's first real career action. a drive or two into that, Jalen Phillips came unblocked on a 0 blitz from the Miami Dolphins, and it looked like Brock Purdy was dead to rights, but Brock Purdy made a lot of people believers by connecting with George Kittle on a 3rd and 9 or maybe even a 3rd and 12 with Jalen Phillips trucking him into the ground. Now Jalen Phillips is on the Eagles, and he's going to be trying to actually get to Brock Purdy in time this time. So it's going to be a hell of a matchup. The Eagles are a powerful, powerful defense. But they have got this year by the team that we're talking about right now, the Chicago Bears, who have just punched their ticket to the divisional round of the playoffs. And the weaknesses that Philly has shown on the offensive end this year should also potentially give the 49ers another window with which to attack this game. As you've already seen through the games on Saturday, the Carolina Panthers, who are massive underdogs against the Rams, almost won. The Bears, who were underdogs against the Packers and were down to an 8% chance of winning when they were down 21-3, came back and won. Ben Johnson says that they showed the Falcons-Patriots 28-3 Super Bowl game to the team in camp as a lesson that a game is never over. Let's listen to another clip from Ben Johnson in his post-game press conference. This is good stuff. I think Ben Johnson has done such a fantastic job with the Bears this year.
Well, the one thing that we had done during training camp was we had shown the film of the Atlanta and New England game and the Super Bowl from, was that 2016? I can't remember what year that was, but we have 2 players on our roster that were part of both those teams. You know, Grady was with Atlanta and Joe Tooney was with New England, and it was just great to get perspective from both of those players of how that game went down. And I think it's just a good lesson to be learned that, you know, it's 28-3 in the middle of the third quarter, and yet, you know, the game still being played, and there's a lot of time left. And that was my message to the group, was just reminding them that this has been done before, and rather than saying woe is me and oh crap, we're in a hole, it's more, this is a great opportunity for us to turn this thing around into a game that we'll never forget, and that's what they did.
Is that as emotional as
Ben Johnson on the winning end of one of these devastating comebacks? He was the offensive coordinator of the Lions when the 49ers were up 24, or the 49ers were down to Detroit 24-7. Today, it's an 18-point deficit versus a 17-point deficit for the 49ers in that NFC Championship game that Chicago is able to overcome. I've heard that a lot of you wanted to know my prediction for tomorrow. I think the 49ers are going to lose tomorrow. That's not going to make a lot of you very happy, but I do think that there is a clear path to victory for San Francisco if Trent Williams plays. It's very clear if Ricky Pearsall somehow plays, but I still don't think that it's a likely path to victory. So I think I picked 27-24 Philadelphia. I'll have to double check right here. It's up on the San Francisco Standard. You should go check it out. We have our 5 fast predictions with me and Tim. I just saw Tim a little bit earlier. We watched part of this game together. Oops, I've got to get the right window up here for you guys. Oh, I have the wrong. Yeah, I had the video up on the screen here. We're going to get this up for you. There. My prediction is Eagles 27, 49ers 24. And Tim says Eagles 24, 49ers 17. So, but before you despair as a 49ers fan, I picked San Francisco to lose week 1 to the Seattle Seahawks. And the 49ers beat the Seahawks in week 1. Stuff can always happen that makes this stray differently than the prediction. I don't think that the 6-point spread that this game has grown into is indicative of how close this can be. I think this is an evenly matched game because the 49ers have the advantage at quarterback. I think there are certain things they can do to move the ball against Philadelphia that they weren't able to do against the very disciplined Seattle defense. And then, yeah, a big wild card is Philadelphia's extremely talented offense, and the 49ers leaking defense. I mean, it's been rough on that side of the ball. That's a huge wild card in this game. But if the 49ers can just dig in, notch a few stops, maybe get a greasy special teams break or two, all of a sudden they could have a commanding win. I think that they have a pathway to a straightforward win in this game if they can execute offensively and if they can find some of those stops against what's been an inconsistent Philadelphia offense. I think it's going to be a lot of fun. And I think that I want to show you guys Philadelphia one more time. There is Philadelphia City Hall lit up in green. Now, you can't even see the top of it because it was kind of like misty. It was a really, really cool color vibe here in downtown Philly. And then this is right outside the hotel. You could see all the buildings have the green trim on them now because their Eagles are playing the 49ers tomorrow. Everybody hit that subscribe button. What a great first day of the NFL playoffs. We will talk to you very, very soon.